Ingrid Blackburn, and today we are going to do a little bit of watercolor stamping. I have this brand spanking new set from Happy Little Stampers, brand new stamp company, and these are some really fun little images. They have some great greeting sets as well, and I encourage you to check them out at happylittlestampers.com. So today I thought I would use this butterfly image, and what I liked about this image when I saw it was it kind of looked reminded me a little bit of watercolored with these little pockets up here where you can drop some little color. So I thought that we would play around with this a little bit today and see what we come up with. So to start out, I have my piece of watercolor paper, and what I did was I flicked a little bit of masking fluid on here. I have these little flecks that have already dried on here, and that's just gonna retain the natural color of the watercolor paper because I'm planning on to completely cover this. I want to use the whole paper. I don't want any of it to be hidden by any tape or anything. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of adhesive on the back to try to get that to stick down while we're doing a little bit of stamping. I'm gonna use some distress colors today. I'm gonna try using some traditional butterfly colors. I have some Spice Marmalade and some Mustard Seed, and then we'll use some blues and maybe some greens in the background. So to ink this up first, well actually first I need to add some water to my paper. So I'm gonna take a flat brush, and I have a little glass of just plain water here. Whenever I do any sort of watercolor stamping or anything like that, I always make sure that I have a paper towel nearby, and this is just a inexpensive flat brush, and I'm just going to add some water here to my paper and allow that to get a little wet. You don't want a crazy amount on there, but you want enough that it will do a little bit of work. Now I think I might have had a little bit of a heavy hand, so I'll just lift a little tiny bit up. And then we're going to go ahead and ink this up. I'm going to start off with the Mustard Seed, which is a nice, bright, vibrant yellow. And then we'll add a little bit of the Spice Marmalade, especially to the body. Just drop a little in here, and maybe a little on the outside, almost giving it a little bit of a rock and rolled kind of feel. And then we'll go ahead and stamp this and let the water do its thing, work its magic here. You can see, oh, I love how that's bleeding. That's beautiful. So now we'll do the exact same thing, and maybe what I'll do is I will do a little bit of the reverse here. I will do a little bit more orange. Notice I didn't spritz my butterfly. I have enough water down for that, and I think what I'll do here is I will just kind of dab off a little and maybe add a little mustard seed in here. And then maybe just right on the edge, just to give it a little bit of interest, something that's different. Just let it play around a little. Oh, I like that. What do you think? And see how the water's, this one, some of the water has already dried, so this one's not, blending as much as that, and that's okay. It's watercolor, it's not supposed to be perfect. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna re-moisten this little area down here a little. I don't want a crazy amount of water, so I'll just lightly blot that. And I want to have a little bit more yellowish and a little orange here, but not quite as much orange, maybe a little on the body. Same like the top. Notice I didn't really clean this stamp this time, so I'm going to come in from a completely different angle here and try to get those wings on the edge. And we'll just, perfect. Love the way that worked. Now while this is still kind of wet, I'm going to take another watercolor brush, and I'm going to take my Spice Marmalade, just get that down on my surface here. You can also take a spritzer bottle and kind of spritz that as well, and we're just going to come in here and just add a little bit of interest. Let's add a little more water here just to get that to move around a little. I think I did a little too much there. That's okay. Drop a little bit more orange in here, just kind of pull. Maybe have a little bit more water just to kind of pull and create an undercoating here. Just kind of pull that. What's fun about this is there is no right or wrong. I'm really just kind of playing around to see what we have going on here. And I think what I want to do is I think we want to just kind of drop a little bit in here for some variation in color. I love the way it works with this yellow. And now we'll come back in here. We're gonna allow this to dry a little bit. And we'll come back in here, and I think what we'll do is we'll add a little bit more orange. I know this one has dried a little, and I can see that there's still a little bit of water going on. Maybe I'll just zap it quickly with the heat tool just to kind of dry it a little tiny bit. I still want it to have a little bit of wetness to it because I don't want this to be, there we go, you can see that on there. You want it to retain a little bit of its shape, but yet not be completely dry. So I'm just kind of looking from the side to see whether or not I've got a little bit of a wet image that's not too wet. And you can tell when you really look at it, if it gets really glossy and shiny, then it's a little too wet. I'm allowing this one to dry up here because that was the one that had a little too much water on it. So just trying to make sure, because I don't want it to be just a muddled mess. I want to retain some of this beautiful design that Kylie created in her stamps. And let's see how this goes. A little wetter than I anticipated. I can always come back in a second time if I need to once that's dried a little. So I'm really liking how this turned out, and you can see some of that detail is going away here, but that's okay. It kind of lends to the whole watercolor look. You have a little bit of detail and a little bit that's kind of washed away. I am now going to work on the background, and to do that I'm going to use a little bit of blue, and we're going to start off with some Tumble Glass, which is a really light shade. I'm going to work in a little Broken China. And you know what, we're even gonna drop in a little bit of green. I have some peeled paint. I'm just gonna toss that down. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually spritz this so that I can just kind of get that paint activated. So I wanna take a clean watercolor brush, and you're gonna come in with some water. Keep in mind that this still, if to the touch, because it's not fully dry, it's kind of damp. I want to come back in here with a little bit of just clean water, and I'm just going to kind of come around the areas, and I actually should just work on one area at a time. So come in a little bit, and as with Distress, every time water touches it, it kind of reactivates that ink. So you want to get as close without completely touching it. If it bleeds a little bit, that's okay. So we'll come back in here with the Tumble Glass, and now we'll just kind of drop some of this beautiful color in here. And that will work its way outward. And this is actually a technique I've taught in a lot of classes before. I think this is the first time I'm sharing it on YouTube. It's a fun, very easy technique. I'm gonna come back in here with a little bit of Broken China, a little closer to the butterflies. I want that contrast. And you can see where the blue and the yellow touch, you're gonna have a little green, and that's okay too. So now just bring in just even a little bit of water just to kind of wick it out. The blue and the orange next to each other is just such a pretty combination. And you can see that that color kind of fades a little bit as it gets closer to the edge. And I'm really just kind of going for a nice subtle look. I don't mind the green. I just kind of played with that a little bit. I'm going to even come in here and just kind of drop some green in spots. And then I want to blend that out a little, just so that it looks a little bit more random and not so intentional. And that looks really nice. So now we'll move on to another section, and it's important to work in sections here because you'll give that an opportunity to dry. But if I were to add all my water at once, by the time I got to this last section, that would be the wettest, I go back to the first, it'd practically be dry at that point. So, and that's not really going to help you. So now that we have kind of those blue spots, I'm just kind of adding a little bit of green here. And then I just want to make sure to come in with a clearer brush just to kind of blend it out a little. Just to give it some little spots of interest here. You can see here, got that really nice green. So now that I have this beautiful background, I love how it turned out. It's very, you know, has that real watercolor feel to it, but yet it has a little bit of detail as well, which is great. And then we're gonna also come in here and we're gonna add some little water droplets in some other shades. So now I have a little bit of Seedless Preserves, which is a nice dark purple, and some Black Soot. So I'm gonna spritz these just to really get that wet. And I want to take a good size watercolor brush, make sure that's nice and wet here. and just want to get that color kind of going. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of tap that a little bit on my project in some spots. I need this to dry, so now we're going to go ahead and just add a little bit of heat to it so that it doesn't continue to move around. I want that to really stay where it is, and it's going to create this beautiful look. So now that we have these great little splotches, I'm going to take the black soot, and I don't want this to be as pronounced. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it further away from my project. As you can see, it's pretty high up here, and then we're just going to gently tap, but it still made some big black splotches, which is okay. We'll quickly dry those as well. So now I have my dried project, and now I'm going to come in with my finger and just gently bring all this masking, these little tiny flecks that I had in here, and see how they kind of held onto the white of the watercolor paper. So I have a traditional A2 size card, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And we'll just have this here. You can either put it in the center, but you know what? I'm gonna offset it a little bit. I just kind of like that look. I actually really like it in its simplicity here. So if you enjoyed this video, you learned a little something, be sure to subscribe and definitely check out the blog as well. And hope to see you in another video in the future. Bye-bye.